I've been afraid of the night since I was a kid, not because it's too dark or too quiet. As darkness falls, I feel like someone cold and faceless is approaching. I don't remember when it started, and I don't know when it will end. So, as a child, I went to bed before dark. Now, at 25, when that feeling comes back, I knock myself out with alcohol. I drink over and over until consciousness leaves my body. It's the only thing that helps. I've never seen a therapist, but they all say the feeling goes away when I stop drinking. I might have believed him if I hadn't seen him one night. I went into the bathroom to wash my face. As soon as I turned on the faucet, the light flashed. I was shocked by what I saw. There was a humanoid creature lying on the shiny tile surface in the corner. There was no face, just a bloody piece of flesh. It looked like it had been eaten by rats. The arms were too long and thin to be human. The arms had long claws that could have been used to punch through the door to the room. It scratched at the tiles with its claws, as if it wanted to get out of there. I couldn't look away. It was like it wasn't breathing. The melting plastic of the hot lighter and the burn on my fingers woke me up. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I saw darkness. When I came to, I ran to my room, crawled under the covers, and fell asleep. All night, I was haunted by nightmares. The creature chased me. I ran, stumbled, fell, ran again, and it chased me. In the dream, the creature spoke. It couldn't speak properly because it had no mouth, but it scared me. It said it was born with me in my head. All my life, it had fed on my fear to take on flesh and appear in my world. It also said I would never die. As long as I live, he lives too. As long as he doesn't want me to, I won't die. In the morning, a distinct scratch appeared on the tile. When I touched it, it was smooth, as if the scratches had been painted under a shiny coat. I tried to die. I threw myself under the wheels. I slashed my wrists. I jumped from the 5th floor. But each time it saved me, until it would take my life itself. I had to accept it or try to find answers. And in that moment, a constant blanket of fear came over me. I saw it on street corners, in the reflections of dusty shop windows, in the dirt of roadside ditches, in advertisements and posters. It seemed to be everywhere. I didn't go to the regular job I had long ago. I wasn't interrupted then, and there, the alcohol itself seemed to cover it. Then I woke up to a strange noise. I was trying to figure out what the hell it was. It was like a dozen knives had been stabbed into my head, and I carefully got out of bed without even trying to look up. I went straight to the bathroom and leaned toward the mirror. At the edge of the sink, I sobered up instantly. God, I didn't even scream. I just couldn't move. In the mirror, I could vaguely see his unnaturally distended mouth sucking him into me. It seemed to me that if I turned away, even for a moment, I would immediately see Sonia. But it was over quickly, and the creature dragged me into the mirror as if I hadn't even existed. It was a dream. I lay with my arms wide open, trying to digest what had happened, but there were more questions than answers. So I didn't call the police. No one would have believed me. If I told them everything, they would put me in a psychiatric hospital. I knew I couldn't go on like this. In search of answers, I surfed the World Wide Web. My head was shaking, and my bones ached over and over. I smoked a pack of cigarettes and scrolled through useless information, desperate to find at least something useful. But my eyes stopped on a site devoted to mystical topics. There I found an article about a certain creature born of childhood fear, They call it in different ways. In the ancient Slavic peoples, it was called the dark head. Like the sixth sense, it is believed that every person has it, but some people, until the end of life, never recognize its nature, and for others, it turns life into hell. The worst part was that, in most cases, it was impossible to get rid of its essence. But most people never encountered it, and those who did, unfortunately, never told anyone about it. But I can still do it. It's almost impossible to destroy it now. Crosses and holy water don't help. They only make it worse. Prayer has the opposite effect, and the creature becomes frightened. To be honest, I didn't quite understand how it happened, but I had to see for myself. I drank another cup of coffee and continued reading. There are two ways out of this situation. The first is to stop being afraid, no matter how scared you are. That might have helped in the beginning, but I was just a kid when that thing attacked me. The second is to remove mirrors and reflective objects from your house. That way, the monsters can't find them. A pinch of salt sprinkled in the corner of your house will keep them out of your house. Keep your eyes open. He is about to come back into your life. You need an invitation. Do everything you can to make it happen. In this case, do not open the door to strangers. Whoever introduces themselves to you, police officers, ambulance personnel, will look and talk like ordinary people. However, you can recognize them by the voices that come from behind the door. They sound as if they were recorded on an old videotape and make it clear that these are not people. At least the instructions on what to do aren't bad. There is a warning at the end. This creature will try to calm you down before it reveals itself. Stay awake and be very careful. You are relatively safe during the day, but as dusk falls, you should go to bed. Alcohol, if you have it in your life, is highly discouraged. Alcohol clouds the mind and dulls the instinct for self-preservation. Do not answer calls from numbers with the last digit 66. Also, never accept social media invitations to suspicious events. Yes, this list needs to be memorized. Judging by this article, someone is in big trouble. I hope this guy did a good job. There's nothing more we can do. The first thing he did was rip off the bathroom mirror and throw it in the trash can. It fell to the bottom of the trash can with a clatter and shattered. That's it. Why didn't you give me the recipe? I muttered, opened a search, typed in the parameters, and got another kilometer of useless information about so-called cooks practicing black magic. The search was hampered by the fact that I had no idea what this dish looked like at all, or what to serve it with, so I chose the recipe intuitively. I'm sure those who need it will find it. The only thing I would suggest is to open a window while cooking. After a while, everything was ready and scattered in the corner. I sat down on the couch and waited for a miracle. There was nothing to do, and I decided to restore some order. I mopped the floors, washed the dishes, and poured a bottle of cognac into the sink. When I read scary stories on the internet, I wonder at the imagination of the authors and what they were drinking to come up with such a thing. But then it showed up in real life. Now I wonder if the author had too much Chinese chemistry and if he didn't end up drinking his flask. Night creeps up unnoticed. Looking out the window into the yellow light of the street lamp, I shave off a month's worth of stubble. If it weren't for the mirror, it would be nearly impossible. I sat in front of my laptop, tired after cleaning, and searched for some good content. Suddenly, I heard a strange noise from behind the wall, as if one of the neighbors was moving furniture. It's an old house. Anything is possible. But I have a corner room, so there were no neighbors behind the wall, nor could there be. My body felt like it was scalded with boiling water. A slight rattling sound joined the noise coming from behind the wall. I leaned back against the chair and tried to fight the fear clutching my body. The sound disappeared, and I began to come to my senses, covered in cold sweat. The doorbell rang like a sharp blade through my already frayed nerves, collapsing my heart and making it beat at a frantic pace. I don't know why, but I stepped out into the hallway. By horror movie rules, there was no one on the other side of the door. I was shaking, and the bell kept ringing. I peered into the semi-darkness outside the door and saw no one, but the feeling of panic didn't go away. What happened next was that my consciousness collapsed into the abyss like a house of cards. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor in the entrance hallway. My whole body was aching, and my head was foggy, as if I had had too much to drink. I looked around the apartment, trying to get up, but nothing had changed. I went to the kitchen, found the medicine cabinet, and took Anodine. The pain and tingling began to fade. My stomach didn't care about my condition, so I decided to have breakfast. After breakfast, I brewed a cup of hot coffee and sat down at my laptop. As soon as the computer was turned on, a new wave of fear burned me from head to toe. One by one, I started receiving messages from strangers. Invitations to lavish sales, invitations to non-existent entertainment centers. I looked to see if anything interested me, and saw that the address was either a cemetery or an abandoned building. I closed the tab and breathed a sigh of relief when my cell phone rang in my pocket. The screen read, "Incoming call from an unknown number ending in 6666. I rejected the call and placed the phone on the table. A second call made me jump up from my seat. It was the same number. With trembling hands, I pressed the power button on the phone and put it under my pillow. I went out to the balcony with a cigarette and a lighter and sat on the old sofa, inhaling the cigarette smoke and wondering what to do next. It was beginning to be another gloomy day. The sun was barely visible in a sky covered with haze and gray clouds. The bell rang, and there was a knock on the door. I decided I didn't want to go to the front door, so I got up, threw my long-smoked cigarette into a beer can, and headed for the front door. The growing anxiety was awakening bad premonitions in me. "Uncle, give me a drink." I couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl. "Uncle, give me water. I'm thirsty," the child's voice continued to plead. I tried to open the door, but the seemingly harmless, mundane voice sounded strange, as if from headphones. When I swung my hand, the voice changed, apparently realizing it had been recognized. "Open up," the voice said, making me sit up straight. I saw some serious anger. I don't know when it ended. What was behind the door cut me off from reality. I sank into deep detachment. I put my hand on the ball holding a bottle of cognac in the hallway. I couldn't resist and got drunk again. Then I crawled outside, but it kept me awake, and I fell into a deep restlessness. Behind me were the sounds of drums and hooves. My heart was pounding. My mind knew it was only a dream, but my body reminded me that it was far from that. It was hard to run. The roots clung to my feet with their gnarled fingers, and the pungent smell of smoke came from nowhere and entered my nostrils, constricting my throat and constricting my breathing. The sound of the drum grew closer and closer, and then a human voice joined it, repeating, like a mantra, a single word: "Turn around." I jumped out of bed. No, I can't rest in bed. A thought flashed through my mind. I realized it wasn't just a dream and collapsed into the abyss. My legs were covered in bloody scratches, and a thin scar was clearly visible on my foot. My head ached with fatigue. All in all, it was business as usual. Can people get used to being constantly tormented by fear? Wiping my eyelids, which had been closed all night, I walked to the kitchen and flipped on the light switch. No alcohol. That guy broke the rules and almost got killed. No alcohol from now on. I tried to reassure myself. I did for a while. Nothing happened for a few days. But this happiness was short-lived. One night I woke up and couldn't understand what woke me up. Everything was as usual, except there was a strange humming coming from the ventilation system. It was something new, but not strange. Just a light breeze and a lot of rats. But why is my heart pounding? It's a hum. I listen closely. It's starting to sound like a human scream, harmonizing with the howling of the wind behind the blinds. As the sound grew closer and closer, I involuntarily looked toward the window. From there, a red, blood-oozing human face was staring back at me. I tried to focus. The main thing is not to be afraid of anything. That's good advice when you hear strange music in the middle of the night. I sat on the bed, wrapped my arms around my head, and repeated the same phrase. I'm not afraid of anything. It helped, but not much. A tapping sound was heard in the kitchen, like a finger tapping on the window. Knock, 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 knock. God, when is it going to stop? I muttered, unable to do anything about it, and sat like that until dawn. The next morning, a brilliant idea occurred to me. Where should people go when there is an unexplained attack? To the church. I cleaned myself up, put on my jacket and sneakers, and ran out of the house with hope in my heart. As I approached the church, I saw an elderly man sitting on a bench near the exit, and he looked very strange. His face was kind and thoughtful, and the bishop was dressed only in old striped sports pants and a white t-shirt. "Hello, son," he said. "No, not yet. I'm waiting for him. He'll be here soon. Sit down before reality gets in the way." He spoke in a squeaky voice and took a pack of Bellamore out of his pocket. "Hello, I thought we didn't have such cigarettes," I said, seeing the packet. "What can I offer you?" The grandfather held out a cigarette. "By the way, my name is Eugene." The old man extended his hand. I was out of breath, but it was okay. "Smoking kills people," he said with a smirk. "Yes, it does. What else is there besides nicotine?" Anyway, I told him everything that had happened to me. The old man nodded meaningfully and put out his cigarette. "It's your own fault it happened that way. Yes, of course. Now do something about it too." I looked at the old man with a bitter smile, the fire of hope flaring in him to rid me forever of this terrible nightmare that haunted my short life. Of course, it's true. He has exactly what I was looking for. Speaking of life, I didn't even realize I was behind the door. Eugene immediately sensed the heavy atmosphere and staggered through the apartment. But he could be forgiven for such thoughts. Grandfather sat down on the sofa and told me to sit down too. For some reason, Sonia poured her grandfather a drink, and we went to the kitchen, where we talked over a cup of freshly brewed tea. Time flew by in the shadows of our conversation. I must admit that I was a little frightened when I looked at the clock. It was 5 minutes to 12. That's what I understand. I said that and looked at my grandfather. The same creature was sitting at the table across from me instead of my grandfather. A bloody face with a wolf's mouth looked at me and smiled with yellow teeth. The creature looked at me with cloudy eyes full of anger. I staggered back and managed to pour a teapot full of boiling water on it. The creature was in my stomach. The creature squealed like a piglet, and I ran into the room and slammed the kitchen door shut. The creature kicked under the kitchen door and then kicked hard on the hallway floor. Its footsteps were clearly audible over the creaking of the old hardwood flooring. His hands were shaking with fear, and his feet felt like they were sinking into the floor. "Open the door. I know you're here. When is this going to end?" I frantically looked around the couch for protection, but found only the TV remote and a small folding mirror. With another thud, the door swung open with force. It hit the wall, and the creature flew into the room. All that remained was to expose the mirror in front of it. The mirror opened under the pressure. The creature looked at itself, and with a vicious roar, began to melt away like a candle. The mirror in my hand also began to melt, burning my palm, but in my heart, I knew that if I let it go, it would be over. After a few minutes, it was over. All that was left of the creature was its smell. It smelled like someone had set its hair on fire right in front of its nose. I don't know if it was a gorgon jellyfish or something else. I had burns on my hands, and it reminded me of my past life. I rented an apartment and went to visit my relatives in the country. The housework and fresh air really cured me.